following employment recommendations. One being Shannon Hare and then April Blackman. Do I have a motion? Dan, second by Trenda. Discussion? All in favor? It's passed unanimously.
You second those two.
Census. The second item is that the approved administrative recommendation for 2015-2016. I'm not going to read all these, but I'm sure we'll have a chance to go over these. Is there a recommendation to accept these?
So that's administrative.
Administrative. Okay. Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
The second by Charles. Okay, discussion?
Yeah, Jim, did you check on Penny and,
I have not, but I will before the next meeting.
Penny and
Tag.
and,
Dave.
Dave? Okay, so if we have to do an addendum to.
But we'll do that next
Okay.
meeting. I have not checked on that, I'll just be honest with you.
Any discussion? So all in favor? Okay, all opposed? Okay, one opposed.
And the reason I did not do it was because we actually presented that for public viewing the last meeting, and what we'll have to do the next meeting is present it to the next work session for public viewing.
And the next item is the policy.
Assistant Transportation Director and salary schedule. We don't have that in here, do we, the Assistant Transportation Director?
Yes, I hear that's in transfers.
Yes, in transfers.
But it's
I so moved.
information.
So
We'll
moved.
take that recommendation.
Second. So by Bethany, any discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. All right, now the next one was the bus information.
Okay, what we had is last meeting, we had some, and I hope you don't mind, but I talked Morgan about this the other day. He wanted us to discuss a little bit more about the buses, because there are some concerns that we do have some aging buses on the road. I do know this is it's something that's been years in the making, and it's something that we have had discussions about this year on and off. But I do know too is we're also going to have to come up with a plan to try to, because you can't sit here and be talking about it and not come up with a plan. One of the things that we've actually somewhat discussed is they talked about leasing buses, but I don't know if that's very cost effective for our system, considering the number of buses we have on fleet. I don't think it's very cost effective for us. I don't think it would be productive for us at this point, because then after 5 years, you're never going to stop paying. That's the problem. You're going to keep paying. You're just going to keep paying and paying. And
but you offset it, if I understand Lisa's correctly, you offset that with maintenance because a lot of it's on the
yeah, that it is true. That is true. That is very true. And that's something that we're also investigating too. We're doing some investigation on that, trying to see which cost is the best cost for us.
Let's do the math that I did. We have 107 buses, if I understood.
That's about right.
Mike, right, last week, he said the typical bus age is 15 years, that's what they go by.
That's
And
right. The state of Georgia as far as funding.
And 107 buses, we were buying 5 a year, we were still on a 26-year cycle. Now
You're right.
we're only doing 3, we're at over 33.
Now, I tell you, and just from what I've looked at since we met last time, I think it was roughly about 2009 was when we stopped replacing buses at a regular schedule, because that was at the same time that the funding in Georgia, where we fell off the funding cliff, the entire state fell off the funding cliff. And that's just the reality of the world we were in. And what they did is they reduced the buses down shortly thereafter to just the buses that the state was giving us money on to replace. And that's what's got us in the mess that we're in now.
Y'all bring us some kind of recommendation, maybe mine,
Because-
one a year or something till we catch
I
up.
don't even know if 1 a year will get you.
Well, I mean, but I'm talking about if we did in addition to what we.
Well, there are a lot of options out there. I mean, you can rehab an entire bus. I don't know what that costs, but there's ways to do it. I don't know if you get the money to rehab a bus, or you do it by a bus.
The problem is with the rehabbing the bus is this, is we've actually had things where, like, we've had to replace floors in the bus, where the body starts just rusting out, wearing out, and that's just something that that's where we, that's when the bus is pretty much, it's just a shell.
Okay. In the past, I think from a couple years back, from Heard County, we purchased, some buses, I think they leased, and they were off lease, so we were able to purchase, about 20, weren't they? We were here, but it
I
was
wasn't
probably
here.
about 20 or something. Yeah, so we were able to purchase 20, and then some we used for parts and stuff, and then I think we got some from Troop. We got some from Troop at one time that were used, but they were better condition than the ones we had. And then prior to that, we would get anywhere from 5, I think there was one year we got something like 10 buses, but that was prior to 2009.
Well,
I think a number of years ago, and this is going back, and I can't remember how long ago it was, you didn't have a bus replacement policy. And as a result, your fleet just got where the repair costs were out of sight. And so you got on the cycle of buying so many buses a year.
That's right.
And retired, and that's what kept you going until
And we were,
until you hit the
I
financial.
don't want to wait. And so I just want to make sure we
One
on the
thing-
same page. If we get
yeah, and one thing that I've actually even thought about is we can't do it, we actually have buses in this SPOS, but some of this current SPOS is dedicated to retiring bonds. But I know that we're up for a SPOS renewal in the next year and a half, 2 years. I would like to dedicate a good portion of it, because we'll already have retired some of that debt by that time, to possibly playing catch up. Playing catch up. And I think that would be the best way to do it, where it can actually make a dent, and it would actually fix the problem.
yeah,
If you could do it within the 5-year plan, you could fix the entire problem if you dedicate that portion to that. And that's something we need to discuss as a board, and it's something that we could put in plan, but I don't want to give us just one option to paint us into the corner. I want to give us a couple of 3 options to look at, because I think that's fair.
I think the bond payments were paid out in 2017.
Yeah,
Yeah.
summer of 17.
2000, because summer 2000, that was, because when some of our biennial meetings, we discussed it before, where we were at and then what project. At one time, we had a set of priorities, and once we came out of that bond issue, what priorities we were going to look at. And that may be something else too, with our next meeting, with our advanced ed coming up and with the SPOS, that's probably something we need to start looking at too, and then along with deciding what
Well,
system we're going to.
I think that too, when we go into another SPOS going forward, transportation needs to be one of the top 3 priorities. But I think, yeah, but we need to kind of try to keep it at the front. Another thing I think we need to do is we need to look at HVAC at New Mount Hill.
Yep.
And also the roof at the middle school. And those are some things, the middle school roof has not been replaced since '04. It's been patched, and it's okay, but it's not. When you're dealing with a flat roof, it's already 10, 11 years old, it's a matter of time.
Well, those are good things that we need to come up with.
And that's just ideas, I mean. Booster club calls that we talked about at the board retreat. It's kind of
Is it
revisited.
still in our? Well, I remember us talking about it, and I was like, with our policy, I think some of them weren't even aware that we had a policy. And I think my recommendation was to find out what the policy was, and then whatever the booster clubs need to adhere to our existing policy.
I think the last meeting there was some question or something that was raised about the booster club, and I sent Jimmy a copy of your current policy,
If they had that,
which I wrote in '95, I think it was, and then I sent you a copy of another policy that Troop County that I wrote this past year. It's more comprehensive than your plan. So it goes into greater detail, and booster clubs can make you, sometimes they can break you. But I think one thing you need to do is to look at the financial aspect and approve them as they come up, because you can have all kinds of things that develop. And I've had situations where groups get together and go in and talk to the elementary school principal, and she agrees to order 500 T-shirts and they pay for them out of the school account and be reimbursed and never sell the T-shirts. And you can get into all kinds of situations like that. You can get into situations where booster clubs go out and get credit cards, and in some booster club you read about it in the newspaper. Booster club officer decides she'll put some of her children's clothing on the booster club card, or worse than that, you see invariably every year there's also always one or two folks that want to go out and use booster club funds for their own funds. There are other situations that develop where you have booster clubs where you have power struggles, where you get two or three people think they're going to run the whole show, and then all of a sudden they don't tell everybody else when the meetings are and so forth. And I know the hour's drawing late, and so I won't go over the troop policy altogether, but those were kind of some of the problems I tried to solve in that policy. You may want to take a look at it, possibly update yours to do it. What we tried to do is put the onus and make the principal of each school the point person. If you read the troop policy, it does that. Puts the financial responsibility on them and make them report every year as to what the finances are. We're not talking about a full-blown, accounting by a CPA. What we want somebody is to be able to know what you started with, how much money came in, how much you spent, what you got at the end, and to be responsible for that. And then also, if you're not careful. And this is not only here, or not only Troop, but also some of the other, particularly some of the Atlanta schools. If you're not careful, some of the athletic people end up making more money than anybody in the school because of contributions by the booster club.
We haven't been there here.
We have not, but if you're not careful, you can get there. And one thing I did with Troop County is that I put a clause in the policy that no gifts or donations or coaching supplements to include, but use of vehicles, trips, gratuities, gift certificates more than $100 would be given to any employee by the booster club or accepted by any employee. And so it ran both directions, because if you're not careful, sometimes you get yourself into a situation where the employee looks to the booster club for directions instead of the principal. And we've got to remember, the first thing we do is we hire teachers, and then some of them have extra duties. And that's what we don't do sometimes. Now, also, there's one thing, and I'll pass this out, and I won't go into it, you may want to look at, because the policy refers to it, the troop policy, solicitation by students. You may want to take a look at your policy, and I'll give you this one, and then the one that we wrote for troop, which also is dealing with the solicitations and involving students in solicitation and school personnel and how you go about that. I think your policy probably needs a little beefing up, although you may not have had a problem, but usually what you do is you change your policy after you've had the problem rather than before. And you may want to take a look at both of those, that in conjunction with the booster policy.
What I was going to ask this to the board, just a little direction here. Do y'all want to review this, and then when we come back next month, discuss this again? And what I would like, and like y'all to consider if you would, probably getting some of our stakeholders involved in the revision of this policy and try to use this policy that Troop has as a guideline.
Yeah,
What do you think?
talking about getting some of our boots up on the road.
That and some of our coaches
Yeah.
involved,
I think that's a good idea.
our athletic director involved.
Good idea.
Well, I think, yeah, that way if we have more discussion, we can
Yeah.
invite them here,
Yeah.
and have a discussion.
And, you know, you don't have to be expanding policy, I mean.
You don't have to do that,
But I mean, as far as drawing the policy, I mean, I can draw it round, I can draw it flat, just depends on how you.
I'm still gonna make the principals,
yes,
do they need to be involved in that?
yes, I believe they need
Yeah,
to.
you need to have somebody that's a point person.
I agree with you, I believe they do. Do y'all, we'll talk about it next month some, and then possibly after that, if we talk about a committee.
They would do it at the work session, I'll come back at the work session.
Okay, and that might be a good idea for us to discuss that day. But I appreciate the information, thank you.
All right, that concludes our meeting.
Hey, thank y'all for